Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Sometimes you hear about somebody making a move that kind of shakes up a whole industry. That's exactly what happened when Miles Brundage decided to leave Openai.
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal.
This is someone who spent more than 6 years there, led their policy research, and even advised their board on getting ready for AGI.
Right, artificial general intelligence.
It's like leaving a dream job and has everyone wondering why.
Well, what's interesting is he's not just leaving, he's starting something totally new. He launched his own Substack to lay out his vision for AI policy. And honestly, his perspective is worth paying attention to. This is someone who's been deeply involved in shaping the field for over a decade.
So let's dig into his reasons for leaving OpenAI because they really help us understand where he's going next. One thing he talks about is needing more freedom. He felt limited in what he could publicly talk about on all the AI policy topics that he sees as crucial.
Yeah, that makes sense. Companies have their own interests they need to protect. OpenAI is a leader in AI development, so of course they want to manage their messaging and the information they share. But for Brundage, it created this tension. He felt he couldn't be truly impartial while working inside a company so invested in AI's future.
It's like trying to referee a game while you're playing on one of the teams.
Exactly.
And that brings us to his third reason for leaving, which is pretty thought-provoking.
Okay.
He feels like he accomplished a lot at OpenAI, especially advising leadership. But now he sees a bigger need for independent research and advocacy that can influence the whole AI landscape, not just one company's approach.
He wants to make a difference from the outside, and he's clear about that. In his Substack, he says, and I'm quoting here, "I want to impact and influence AI's development from outside the industry rather than inside."
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It really gets to the heart of why his departure is so significant.
He's basically saying, I've done what I can from within. Now it's time to use my knowledge and experience to push for change on a much broader scale. And to really understand what he's aiming for, we need to look at his assessment of where we stand on what he calls AGI readiness.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Brundage doesn't believe that OpenAI, or any major AI lab for that matter, is truly ready for AGI. And neither is the world. He's not trying to be alarmist. He actually thinks it's a pretty widely held view within OpenAI. The question is, will we be ready in time?
That's something we should all be asking ourselves.
Absolutely.
But even before that, we need to be clear on what we mean by AGI.
Right. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot.
Brundage actually thinks it's an overloaded term, one that's often oversimplified.
Yeah, I can see that.
He and his team have been working on a more nuanced framework called Levels of AI, which he hopes to publish on soon.
I'll be looking out for that.
For now, think of Ready for AGI as being able to handle increasingly capable AI systems safely, securely, and in a way that benefits everyone.
Okay, so it's not about reaching some magical finish line, but building a system for responsible development at each stage.
Exactly, like building a house. You don't just start putting on the roof without a solid foundation, framing, electrical, plumbing, all the essentials.
Makes sense.
And when it comes to AI, Brundage has identified 6 key areas that he sees as crucial for building that house of responsible AI policy. Think of these as the blueprints he's laying out.
Got it. The foundation for good AI policy.
He doesn't plan to go deep on all of them right away, but he sees them as interconnected pieces of a bigger puzzle.
So understanding these areas is key to understanding his vision.
Exactly. So let's take a look at the first one, which is all about assessing and forecasting AI progress. Brundage sees a real need for more unbiased analysis here. He feels like a lot of the current assessments, whether they're from companies with a stake in the game or academics chasing grants, just aren't objective enough.
He's calling for a more rigorous approach, one that can cut through the hype and give policymakers a realistic view of how fast AI is developing and what it means for us.
Right, because one of his biggest worries is that there's this gap between how fast AI is moving and how seriously policymakers are taking it.
It's like we're all on this train that's speeding up, but some people are still arguing about whether it's even left the station.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And for Brundage, that's a problem. He thinks we need to be much more proactive in how we respond to AI, starting with a clear understanding of where we are and where we're headed.
And that leads us to his second priority, which is all about regulation, specifically regulating frontier AI, the cutting-edge stuff for safety and security. He's pretty clear that the current pace of policymaking isn't nearly fast enough to keep up with how quickly AI is changing.
He's saying we need to hit the gas pedal on AI policy if we want to avoid some serious accidents or worse.
Right. And he's not being vague. He points to existing legal frameworks and initiatives like the EU's AI Act as opportunities to take action now.
So he believes there are tools and mechanisms already in place that we can use to address some of the most urgent concerns while we work on bigger solutions.
It's about being strategic with what we already have.
So we've got unbiased assessment of AI progress and smart regulation of cutting-edge AI. What's next on his list?
Well, it's something that often gets overshadowed in all the talk about AI risks, the economic impact. And this is an area where he's particularly worried.
Yeah, this is a big one.
He thinks we're just not ready for the economic disruption AI is likely to bring. He's particularly interested in the possibility of a post-work future. You know what happens when AI can automate so many jobs that traditional work becomes obsolete?
It's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is, and he wants us to have those difficult conversations now before it's too late.
To think about what that transition might look like and how we can ensure it benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. He's even looking at things like innovative tax policies as possible solutions. Our current systems were designed for a world that's quickly disappearing.
Like we're entering a whole new economic era, but still trying to navigate with maps from the last century.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
He's basically saying we need to update our GPS if we want to get where we need to go.
I like that.
And speaking of navigating new territory, his fourth priority is something that's often lost in all the doom and gloom about AI risk: the potential for beneficial AI applications.
Right.
He's not saying we should ignore the risks, but he thinks we need to be more proactive in developing what he calls AI for good.
So using AI to solve real-world problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like in healthcare, climate change, education.
It could change everything.
He sees this as a way to shift the conversation around AI to create a more positive and collaborative environment. If we can show how powerful AI can be for good, it might encourage more responsible development.
It's about highlighting the potential for positive change.
And that brings us to his fifth priority, which might surprise some people: compute governance. He's really passionate about this, and is where his expertise shines through.
So tell me more about this compute governance. What is it exactly?
Well, he believes that computing hardware, the actual physical stuff that powers AI, is a critical focal point for policy, but one that's often overlooked. He argues that unlike software or data hardware, has unique properties that make it especially relevant to policy discussions.
Okay, I'm following you.
It's tangible. You can track it, and its supply chain is much more concentrated than, say, software development. And Brundage is worried that the policy world is lagging way behind what's happening in the industry.
He's sounding the alarm bells.
Okay, so we've covered 5 of his priorities. Ready for number 6?
Lay it on me.
This one is what he calls overall AI grand strategy. Think of it as a call for a more comprehensive vision for how humanity interacts with AI, not just individual solutions to specific problems.
So a bigger picture approach.
Right. He's not happy with existing proposals, which he often finds too simplistic or vague. He wants to explore the complex trade-offs involved in AI policy and find solutions that actually benefit all of humanity.
So it's like he's saying, let's zoom out and look at the big picture here.
Exactly.
Right?
What kind of future do we want to build with AI, and how do we get there?
And it's important to remember that he's already published on all of these topics while at OpenAI. But his point is that now, outside of the corporate world, he has the freedom to explore them in a deeper and more impactful way.
It's not just about the ideas themselves, but about the context they're explored in and how quickly he can share his findings.
So it's about having the freedom to dig deep and make a real impact.
Exactly. And that leads us to a really interesting question. How will he maintain his independence as he moves forward with his research and advocacy?
Well, for that, you'll have to stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive.
You got it.
So I bet you're wondering how Brundage plans to stay independent now that he's outside of OpenAI, right? Especially because they offered him some pretty sweet resources to keep going with his work.
Yeah, they offered funding, API credits, even early access to their AI models. It's a tempting offer for sure. But Brundage didn't jump at it. He's really cautious about conflicts of interest, even just the appearance of a conflict.
It shows he's committed to doing things the right way.
Yeah. He basically said, I want my research to be seen as objective and unbiased. And that means being careful about funding and access.
He's definitely aware that people are going to scrutinize his work, especially since he's coming from OpenAI.
In his Substack, he says, I will make any decisions jointly with the people I work with going forward, weighing real or perceived hits to independence against greater ability to do certain forms of work.
So he's really thinking this through.
And on top of that, he's also aware of potential biases from his connections to different communities.
Right.
He's been involved in the effective altruism movement, which has been a big influence on the AI safety and policy world.
Yeah, that's a good point. It reminds us that none of us are completely neutral. We all have our own background and experiences that shape our views.
Exactly. But the important thing is to be open about those influences and be willing to consider different points of view.
To have those open and honest conversations.
And that's what Brundage is committed to. He wants to have those conversations about AI policy without getting stuck in ideological labels or dismissing ideas just because where they came from.
So let's move on from his reasons for leaving OpenAI and his commitment to staying independent. Let's talk about something really unique, his scoring system for evaluating humanity's progress on AI governance. This is where he gets into the details of what it really takes to build a future where AI is good for everyone.
It's like a report card for how we're doing on AI governance.
And let me tell you, we have some room for improvement.
Oh boy.
He's honest about where we stand, but he also believes that we can succeed if we're willing to put in the effort and act fast. Ready to see our grades?
Hit me with it.
Okay, first up, shared understanding. This is about creating a common understanding of the potential benefits and risks of AI.
Okay, so everyone's on the same page.
Right. He gives us a B in this area, which isn't terrible, but it's not great either.
So you're saying public awareness is growing, but we need to go beyond just knowing about AI and really understand what's at stake.
We need to understand how AI could impact our lives, our societies, our future.
Okay, makes sense. What's next?
Next is technical tooling. This is about developing the tools we need to manage AI effectively.
Like AI alignment and making sure AI systems do what we want them to do.
Exactly. And understanding why they're doing it. Here, he gives us a C. Not so good.
Yikes.
He's saying that while some good research is happening on AI safety, it's just not enough. We need to invest more, coordinate our efforts, and focus on the really tough challenges.
Like making sure AI is actually safe and beneficial.
Right. The third area is regulatory infrastructure. This is about creating the rules and regulations to ensure AI is developed responsibly.
So this is where the government comes in.
Right. And this is where we get our highest grade, a C+. Still room for improvement, but at least we're passing.
Okay, that's something.
Brundage acknowledges that policymakers are starting to pay more attention to AI, but he's cautious. He wonders if these efforts will be enough to keep up with AI's rapid development.
So are we doing enough fast enough?
That's the question. He emphasizes that we need a comprehensive approach to regulation, one that looks at the whole process of how AI is built and the data it's trained on.
So not just looking at what AI systems produce, but how they get there.
Exactly. He also talks about an ecosystem approach to regulation.
What does it mean?
It means we can't just look at individual AI applications in isolation. We have to think about the bigger picture, how AI is being used, and what the ripple effects could be.
So for example, it's not just about regulating self-driving cars, but understanding their impact on our cities, our infrastructure, and jobs.
Exactly. It's about seeing the whole system.
Okay, so that's regulatory infrastructure. What's next?
This next one isn't pretty. Brace yourself.
Okay, I'm ready.
Legitimacy. This is about ensuring that decisions about AI are made fairly transparently and accountably to the public. And we get a D+.
Wow, that's rough. Why so low?
Well, Brundage is concerned about a few things. First, there's not enough public input in AI development.
It feels like these decisions are being made without much consideration for the people who will be most affected.
Exactly. And second, there's a lot of power concentrated in the hands of a few big tech companies. They have the resources, the data, and the talent to lead AI development, but it raises questions about fairness and accountability. It's a valid concern, for sure.
And that brings us to another area where he's really worried. Societal resilience. This is about preparing for the potential disruptions AI could bring to our social fabric. Things like job displacement, misinformation, and erosion of trust in institutions.
Okay, so how are we doing in this area?
Not well. We get an F.
Oof, that's a failing grade. We are just not prepared for the societal impact of AI. We're already seeing examples with deepfakes and other ways AI can be used to manipulate people.
And it's only going to get harder as AI becomes more sophisticated.
Exactly. The last area Brundage looks at is differential technological development.
That's a mouthful.
It is. It's basically about steering AI development in a direction that benefits humanity instead of just letting it evolve on its own.
So we're not just letting AI develop however it wants. We're guiding it towards good.
Right. But we're not doing so well here either. We get another D+.
So we have a lot of work to do.
We do. But remember, he believes we can succeed if we're willing to put in the effort.
Now that we've seen where we're falling short, I'm curious to hear what Brundage suggests we do about it. What steps can we take individually and collectively to improve those grades and create a future where AI benefits everyone?
Okay, so we've seen Brennage's report card, and honestly, it's not great. But I'm hoping he has some concrete advice for how we can improve. What can we actually do to move those grades up and build a future where AI benefits everyone?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that too. He doesn't just point out the problems, does he?
No, he definitely offers solutions. And one of the first things he talked about is a question I know a lot of people are asking themselves. Should I go work at a place like OpenAI?
It's a tough one. You might think that to really make a difference, you need to be on the inside at one of those powerful AI labs. But is that really the best way to have an impact?
Brundage actually has an interesting take on this. He thinks working at OpenAI or a similar company can be very impactful, especially for people focused on safety and making sure AI benefits a lot of different people. He even encourages people working on AI capabilities and product development to use their position to advocate for ethical outcomes.
So it's not just about having a separate ethics team tucked away somewhere.
Right, it's about everyone in the company taking responsibility for the consequences of their work.
But he also recognizes that some types of policy research, like what he's planning, might be better done outside the industry.
He sees the need for independent voices who can hold those companies accountable
Yeah.
and offer a more objective perspective.
It's hard to criticize the people who are paying you.
Exactly. And speaking of being effective, Brundage has some thoughts about how the AI policy world needs to change if we want to make real progress.
Okay, I'll listen.
He sees a lot of wasted effort and duplicated work because people are working in silos. They hold on to their own pet theories and don't share information well.
He's calling for a culture shift.
Yeah, he wants to see more collaboration where researchers and advocates from different backgrounds can work together to find solutions that work for everyone.
So instead of everyone building their own little AI policy empires, let's work together to build something amazing.
Exactly. And he's not just talking about collaboration. He wants to see concrete action, not just vague statements and empty promises.
Show me the plan.
Right. He wants detailed proposals backed up by research and analysis. He's like, stop talking about the problem and start showing me how you're going to fix it.
I like that.
And he's not afraid to challenge some of the common ideas in AI policy. For example, he's critical of the whole AI race narrative.
You mean the idea that democratic and autocratic countries are competing to develop AI?
Yeah, he thinks that kind of thinking is dangerous. It just encourages reckless development and increases the risk of conflict.
It's like two kids daring each other to do something dangerous.
Exactly. Brundage is saying, let's stop playing these games and start working together to make sure AI is safe for everyone.
So instead of a race, he wants to see more cooperation.
Right? Even between countries that have different values or political systems.
That's a challenge.
It is. But he sees it as essential for navigating the challenges of AI.
What about some of the other ideas that get thrown around? Like a robot tax to deal with the economic impacts of AI.
He's skeptical of those simplistic solutions. He argues that we need to be more thoughtful and creative about the policies we use and consider the potential unintended consequences.
It's not as easy as just slapping a tax on something.
No, it's much more complicated than that.
So it's about being strategic and thinking long term.
Exactly. And he's not just focused on the global level. He also talks about engaging at the national and local levels.
And bringing it closer to home.
Right. He wants to give communities a voice in how AI is used in their lives and make sure the benefits of AI are shared fairly. It's about making AI policy relevant to everyday people.
AI isn't just something for experts to debate. It's going to affect all of us. So we all need a say in its future.
That's a really important point. Now, Brundage doesn't claim to have all the answers. He knows there's still a lot we don't know about AI, but he's encouraging us to experiment and keep learning.
To be open to trying new things and adapting as AI changes?
He sees it as an ongoing process.
This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And we need to be flexible, adaptable, and learn from our mistakes.
So what's the main takeaway from all of this? What does Brundage really want us to understand?
Well, in his Substack, he highlights a quote that I think sums it up pretty well. AI and AGI benefiting all of humanity is not automatic and requires deliberate choices to be made by decision makers in governments, nonprofits, civil society, and industry, and this needs to be informed by robust public discussion.
We have to choose to make it happen.
Exactly. It's not going to happen on its own. We have to actively shape the future we want.
And that means all of us have a role to play.
We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to fix things. We need to be part of the conversation, learn about the issues, and demand better from our leaders.
So the big question for all of us is this. What role will you choose to play in shaping a future where AI benefits all of humanity?
That's a great question. And I encourage everyone listening to check out Brundage's Substack for more insights and join the conversation. The future of AI is too important to be left to just a few people. It's up to all of us to shape it.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for a better future.